Greetings, citizens of Westeros. We are the Justified Ancients of Asshai, coming to you from a far-off time in a far-off land to speak to you today about a new series in the George R. Martin world. I am Janik Ashbourne.
And I am Eira Voss.
As
always. Adaptation to a show.
Okay.
The series is A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, and it is actually 3 different books.
The first episode is entitled A Hedge Knight.
Yes. Scene 1 is a burial scene, and we are introduced to the main character, Sir Duncan the Tall, and he is burying his master. It is quite sad because we learn that Duncan was an orphan and his master has taken him in when he was quite young.
So to set the scene, we first see Duncan with 3 horses in front of a lonely tree out in the middle of a field or a meadow on a slight hill on a rainy day.
Yeah, it's the quintessential funeral, like I don't know. It always seems like the world cries when there's a person dies that is important to you.
So even though there is not anybody else present except for animals, there is just one solo person, just Duncan, Dunkus, he's known at least at this point. And he is burying his former master and mentor. And we see him shoveling. We see him digging a perfectly rectangular pit, very shallow pit.
I wonder if that's important. I mean, I have not, and although I read a lot of George R. Martin's books, I have not read the series of books yet. I have started to, but I have not finished them. So I wonder if he is why that is so exacting. It was like the perfect square. But another point I wanted to make about the fact that nobody was there with him except his animals is that, Duncan appears to be completely alone, like he has nobody. Like it appears that his master was his only friend, and that he seems to be just talking to his horses as if they are his friends throughout the first episode. That's one observation that I have made.
And I will say that I think there are some themes early on that get introduced that we see later on in the show, and we may see later on as the series goes on. One of those is there are trees, the solo tree, the singular solo tree. Of course, in George R. Martin, they use trees a lot. One is in the religion, the religion of the nature religion
of the North.
That is common in the North, the old religion, where they have faces on trees, and some other things. And they mentioned later on about how trees are not great shelter because rain can get through them like a screen. So they can block some, but not all. And I think you see that from the very beginning, which again drives home the loneliness that he doesn't have a place to get shelter in this rain. He is all by himself. He is subject to the elements, and he's in this world.
Mm-hmm. And it's also notable that the episode is titled The Hedge Knight, which Duncan and his master were, and he is burying his master in a hedge under or by the tree. And so that is the opening, opening scene. And one thing about that, about hedge knights, is that they are the poorest of the knights. They tend to be, as far as knights go, the lowest ranking. They tend to be not the land owning knights. So they're either like the third or fourth sons of lords. And so they tend to not own homes or lands, and they sleep outside a lot. So that could also be that the way he's just used to being.
And in this world, as in our world, there is in your world, there are like a caste system. There are levels where you have kings and royals at the very top, and you have peasants at the very bottom. Well, knights are generally well thought of. There's lots of songs about knights. In Game of Thrones, Sansa is enthralled with the story and wants to have her knight in shining armor who will come by. She believes will come by and bring her to a magical world. So knights are really highly thought of. But even within the knights level, so knights are below the royals, but within the knights level, the lowest, as you mentioned, is the hedge knights. In fact, they are so low that to be called a hedge knight for a knight is an insult to a knight, because it's saying you're the lowest of your rank.
Well, and what does that mean to be a hedge knight? In essence, it means that no lord has taken you in their, what would it be called, in their service. So you're not being paid by a lord to protect their
land.
So that is why you're considered the lowest, is because you have no one that is like recognizing you and supporting you.
Yes, and later it is mentioned how that a knight without a horse is basically nothing, and that is true, because a knight without a horse is essentially a sellsword, if they're even any good at that, and that would bring them to the next level. So the next level down. So we're introduced to Duncan, a lonely knight, or actually at this point we don't even know he's a squire. He's a squire whose knight has passed away.
Mm-hmm.
As far as we know, that's where we are introduced, and that's where this whole series is launched from that perspective.
So Duncan was the squire for Sir Arlen of Pennytree. Since Sir Arlen had passed away, Duncan got the idea that he would try to compete in the tourney in his stead. So on the way to the tourney, he stops at an inn to eat. And this is when we're introduced to the second major character. I'm not going to say his name right now because we don't learn his name until the very end.
Young boy.
A mysterious young boy. Dunk walks up to a young boy, and which he assumes is the stable boy. And he asks the young boy to tend to his horses. And the young boy says, well, he could if he wanted to. And Dunk yells at him. He assumes that the boy is giving him attitude. And basically was like, do you want to slap in the face, young boy, or something like this? And he goes ahead and gives him the reins of his horse and goes inside and proceeds to get dinner in the inn the young boy is taking care of his horses. Inside the inn, it is interesting. Some interesting event happens where there is a young man having his dinner that has blonde hair and is heavily drunk. And this scene, I believe, is very important. Because I believe this blonde man is going to be another knight competing at the tournament. And the reason why I think it's going to be important is because I believe this man might be a Targaryen, because he has really light, kind of silvery blonde hair. And he puts down a coin and they make a point to like zoom in on it, and it has the Targaryen sigil on it. And he looks at Dunk and he says, "I dreamed of you. Stay away from me." And then he gets up and he leaves the room. Now, if he is a Targaryen, he may have what is known as dragon dreams. And so whoever Duncan is to this man, he may have a profound impact in the life of the Targaryens.
Okay, so the next character we're introduced to is the innkeeper wench, the lady of the inn, as it were, who seems to be running the place. She runs through the menu and makes a comment on Dunk's physical appearance, as he's tall, because he wants a lot of food. And she says that you're up for it. She mentions, first she asks if her son was there or if he had run off to the tournament, leading you to believe that the boy we just met is her son. And Dunk replies he is there, although he was being insolent.
So the innkeeper asked, "Did my son take care of your horses, or did he run away again?" The interesting thing about that was that afterwards, when Dunk went to go, after he was done eating, he went to go retrieve his horses from the young boy. The young boy asked him if he could go with him as a squire to become Dunk's squire to the tourney. And he said, "How would your mother feel about that?" And the boy responded, "She wouldn't care because she's dead." And so that indicates that that wasn't the innkeeper's son. That was a hint that this boy is not the innkeeper's son, and hence was indeed most likely not the stable boy.
That's not his mother. Therefore, when she said that line, "Is my son there or has he run off?" the real answer is he's run off.
So who is
But
this
Duncan doesn't know that.
Yeah. So who is this young boy? Duncan assumes that it's just an orphan. The boy is he is plainly dressed. But one striking feature of the young boy that I picked up immediately was that he had a shaved head. And
which is a sign of wisdom.
that is true. Now, he was thinking that maybe that was a natural type of baldness.
Yes.
Now, the child that we didn't mention his age. The child appears to be possibly about 7 to 8 years old. What would you say?
Perhaps, well, or perhaps 7 to 8 years old after his name day, which you don't get named until you're 2 years.
Perhaps he was a runaway or something like that. And then he said, the other thing about that, the reason why I was thinking that was because he kind of was holding himself very confidently. He wasn't acting like a normal, let's say he was 8 years old. He was speaking like an adult. His language was very developed. He was coming from the standpoint of authority. You know what I mean? Like he came across as the boss, the one who knows what's going on. Like he would tell Dunk, this is what a knight looks like, and this is how one should dress. And he was telling Dunk, I could ride a horse better than you, and that's not how a knight name should be. And this is not what your belt should look like. And I know all the knights, and it just seemed like he was of nobility or a very high status.
All right. It harkens back to when Arya was a cupbearer for Tywin. And in that, she referred to my lady or my lord, and he corrected her and said that if she was truly who she said she would say my lady or my lord. And her speech and her presentation gave her away as someone of a higher class, just like what you've noticed.
Just like this young boy's presentation was giving him away.
I think this kind of harkens to another theme that will probably be that I'm expecting to see throughout the series, and that is that appearances are not always what they seem to be. So, for example, when people might see a clueless, young, ignorant hedge knight or even squire in Duncan, it clearly we're seeing in this show a character we're built around this character that there is more there. There is more to it. Just like other characters we saw that have in the Game of Thrones universe that have more to them. I'm thinking of like Brienne of Tarth. There was a lot more there than people saw. People saw just a scary, tall, freakish, and she was a knight as strong and as brave as any, and so forth. So I think that's going to be a theme that we're going to see lots of things that appear to be one way, and that the camera and the show presents as one thing, but it's really another, and they will give you clues. Find information about all these characters out there. There's a lot of information. A lot of stuff has been written.
Yeah.
So if you want to, you can find that. And we have done our research, and so we know a lot about it. We will try to, at times throughout this, be sensitive to people who don't want to know and just want it to be revealed. So I think you're about to reveal something that is in depth as you research.
Yeah. I will not spoil anything as far as, tell you something that is going to happen in the series before the show shows it, right? However, if there's something like what I'm about to tell you, which is that Duncan the Tall is the ancestor of Brienne of Tarth, which Brienne of Tarth is part of the Game of Thrones series, and which was the character he was talking about, which was an extremely tall lady who wanted to be a knight, and she was a very capable knight. She made the Knight's Guard for King Baratheon, and so, as you know, the King's Guard are the highest level of knight one can make. And so divulging that sort of information, I believe, is okay because that series has already been out. These books have been out for 15 to 20 years already, and the shows have been already released for 10 years. So to give the information that, Dunk is her, great grandfather or something like that, I think is just like endears you to him. series takes place approximately 100 years prior to Game of Thrones.
So it is 3 generations, essentially.
Yeah. So most of the characters in this series are their great grandparents. The scene is we arrive in Ashford and we are talking to the steward. So Duncan arrives in Ashford and he asks to see the steward. He has to talk to the steward to sign up for the tourney. Only knights can compete in the tournament. And as we said earlier, it was supposed to be Sir Arlen that was competing. And Duncan now has inherited his master sword. And the steward says, well, I recognize the sword as Sir Arlen, but no one told me that you were knighted. Do you have any witnesses that can confirm that he knighted you? Because it is true a knight can knight somebody else. And Duncan says that nobody witnessed it. And so then the steward tells him basically that he can't compete unless he goes and finds somebody who can, a lord who can vouch for him. So he has no other way but then to go to, and so Sir Arlen served as a knight in the wars. There was the Blackfire Rebellion, and Sir Arlen served for under Lord Dondarrion during these rebellions. And so Duncan had the idea that he would go to Lord Dondarrion and ask him to vouch for him.
First of all, let's to talk about the Dondarrion. I think that draw a parallel between him and his progeny, or someone in his family that's several generations down that we see in the Game of Thrones. A lot of people are looking for Dondarrion because he's a Robin Hood type character who seems to cause trouble for people of high estates, and he seems to be helping the poorer people. So a lot of the bad guys are looking for him, even torturing to find information about it. However, in this one, in the first, at least for the first part or some part of this show, this episode, we see that our hero Dunk is looking for Dondarrion, but he is quite a different character than we are introduced into with the Game of Thrones. So the concept that they are, Dondarrions get sought out, and they are heavily sought out and hard to find. In this case, he's drunk a lot, and sleeping or resting or what have you, as we are introduced to by his ladies of attendance.
Ladies of the night.
Yes, or the day or the afternoon or wherever. But I also want to go back to the steward. I think the steward is one of my favorite characters. There's a lot of humor that's in this. Certainly a lot of it is set up. It's very dry for the most part. When Duncan introduces himself, he asks his name. He says Dunk. And so the steward dunks his bread into his soup or ale, and so forth. And he pulls Dunk's leg, telling him that if he were to be false about his story, then a very bad torture would befall him. I also want to just briefly mention, and I know that this is out here a lot, is whether or not Dunk was really knighted or not, the kind of origin that he tells. It is certainly presented the way I see it, as that did not happen. He just kind of made it up. He has this kind of story, because he indicates that Sir Arlen always intended to, but in the flashback scenes, he asks if he's going to do that, and he's just like, he spits. He does nothing. He does nothing to indicate in the affirmative. Yes. So we are certainly led to believe that he was not, in fact, actually knighted, that Sir Arlen died before he could, if that was his intention.
Yeah, and at this point, we have no idea if he's ever fought an attorney before, or if he's even a good fighter. I mean, because the steward warns him, you do know, sir, that if you lose, the victor gets all of your armor and your horse. And in order to get it back, you have to pay him money to get any of your stuff back. You have to pay a ransom. And Duncan looked really concerned about that. And he was like, the steward said, do you have the money for that? And he was like, oh, good God, no. And then he thought about it, and the steward, because the steward looked shocked, and he said, well, I mean, I won't have any use for that like this. But you weren't really sure that it, like, he was just saying that because he still wanted to enter, but like he really didn't have the confidence about it, like that it was definite that he was going to win. And you see later on in the series, which is the next scene we'll cover, the next major scene we cover, which is the Baratheon tent, which is one of the funnest scenes that I liked, was the Baratheon party tent, as you will, the Baratheon pregame. Yes. Duncan fails to find Manfred Dondarrion. He goes to have dinner in Lionel Baratheon's tent, and they first strike up a very contentious kind of like, who are you? You know, Lionel seems to like mess with him. Like, why are you in my tent? Are you like here to pledge allegiance to me? Are you gifting me something? Okay, if you're not, then you best entertain me.
Well, he says, are you here to kill me?
Well, yeah, but I think he was messing with him. He was testing him. He seems to be quite the character, which is what I liked about him. But I think he was mentally messing with him. But I really like the psychology of it all, though. Like, because he said to him, quite literally, he says, the first words he said to him is he called him over and he said, have you ever been punched in the face? Like, that was the first words he said. And he said, because tall men get punched in the face more often than short men. He said, do you know this is the truth? Is that why you slouch? If I ever catch you slouching in my presence again, I will kill you. Because I think you're acting like a coward when you slouch, because you don't want people to know how tall you are.
This is a very interesting point, a very, very crucial point that could go overlooked. So, first of all, I want to point out that Baratheon is presented with the stag's antlers on his head, which I find to be reminiscent of another universe of the character Loki, who also wears similar type of things. And Baratheon is acting like very much like a mischievous, drunken Loki type of character. But throughout, we've already seen Duncan hit his head twice. We've already seen the innkeeper and others refer to him by his height and notice his height. And Baratheon makes the statement, dude, the seven gods that are, the seven gave you your height. So you should not hide that. You cannot hide that. You should be tall. And that is very crucial towards his identity. As we learn in the Game of Thrones, we hear his name in the Game of Thrones. And we hear it in reference to this. And it becomes from this point where he says, the tallness, you stand out from a crowd. This that he seems to have always kind of been embarrassed by. He slouches. He doesn't like, he tries to blend in. He tries to fade to the background, but he cannot. And so therefore he is not who he's trying to not be who he actually is in that sense. And Baratheon tells him, be tall.
And so what he asks him to do is dance for him. And so Duncan is like, sure, I love to dance. And so they danced the whole entire night together, which was, I liked it. It was really fun.
And he had to be started off. You see him start off very stiff in doing the traditional dance. And Baratheon comes and steps on his feet.
Yeah.
He has to basically attack him to make him dance. It's equivalent of, in a lot of Westerns, where somebody would shoot at the person's feet and say, dance, dance. Mm-hmm. So that they would be moving their feet in order to avoid the bullets. In the similar way, he's moving his feet to avoid being stepped on. Mm-hmm. But then, in another character moment, Duncan doesn't just stand back. He steps on Baratheon's toes. Mm-hmm. He is not afraid to step on this person, which this could actually be a serious offense that he's doing, mm-hmm. attacking some high lord like this. Mm-hmm. But he, in this moment, kind of cuts loose and is ready to go with the moment. And from that moment on, for the rest of the scene, he has let go of his reservations. He is more free. He dances. He enjoys himself. And then you see him talking with Baratheon. Yeah. And this time he has the stag crown on his head. Yeah. But it does not look as a Loki crown on him. It clearly looks out of place. And they're talking about the way of things. And
the scene, this is one of my favorite interactions when they're drunk. They have a very deep, meaningful conversation about their fears in life. And Duncan is telling him that he's really afraid to do battle or to be in the tourney the following day. So just as I suspected earlier, he was pretending to be confident about, well, I don't need money anyway, because I'm not going to lose. But when he is drunk and talking to Baratheon, he confirms to Baratheon, you are actually right. You know, I am afraid. Look, you have your inheritance. You have trained with all of the greatest masters, with all of the greatest tools and weapons. What chance do I have? And Baratheon looked at him and he said, you have no chance. But that's no good, sir. That's awful. And Baratheon says, no, it's not. It's good for you because you're going to go against worthy foes. And there's nothing greater than you can do for yourself than to challenge yourself against worthy foes. Like, that's the best thing. And Dunk says, with all due respect, sir, I'm going to lose my only horse. And Lionel Baratheon says, well, a knight without a horse cannot really call himself a knight now, can he? And they both start laughing. And I thought that was a quite endearing scene. He's putting it all on the line. You know, he has this one shot. If he gets in this tourney and if he loses his horse, he doesn't have any way of making money to buy another horse. He, in the beginning, in the first scene, he makes a comment that he could sell his horse and eat well for a year, but then what? So that's how much a horse is. He doesn't have any other skills. So if he loses his horse, he's in a lot of trouble. And a lot of hedge knights come in and try to make it, and they don't. And there was a scene when he was looking for Dondarrion where people are very dismissive of him, and they don't even want to help him find Dondarrion. Nobody even wants to help him enroll for the tournament. And Dondarrion doesn't either. Dondarrion does not help him get into the tournament. When he finally does come across Dondarrion, he says, I don't remember you. I don't remember your master, Sir Arlen. There are many men that even died for me that I don't remember, that died in my service. So why would I just remember someone who got injured in my service or somebody who just fought for me in my service? And everything was very dismissive. And the reason why they are is because there's lots of people who try to make it, and they have the dream that they're going to be a knight or win at tourneys, and they never do.
Something else as that scene ends. The scene ends with a drunk Baratheon stepping on the table and exiting forward. But what he does, when in his drunken way, with his giant crown, stag crown, he knocks a chandelier with his stag crown.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I think, in a way, could be symbolic, because Duncan previously has hit his head twice on something. His height has accidentally knocked it over, which is probably why he slouches, the real reason.
Mm-hmm.
So we see this as Baratheon is doing that, showing that because he is not really tall, he is not used to that. He apologizes to the chandelier for being knocked over. But I think that this is a passing of the torch in a sense, is because, as we see, when he said to Duncan, embrace being tall, I think this is the last time we've seen Duncan hit his head, and instead that has been passed on. And we see that kind of symbolically in the way that it's done by the Duncan.
So next scene. The next scene is he goes back to his campfire and he finds he has a visitor. So the young boy that he met at the inn has arrived at his campsite at the tournament. Now, this young boy is the one who asked if he could squire for him. And he told the young boy no. And he probably told the young boy no simply because he doesn't have any money to pay for a squire. But the young boy just showed up, and he finds the young boy who made a fire at the camp place and is like cooking food, caught a fish even for him, and is cooking him dinner. And he's like, "What are you doing here? I told you no." And they get to talking to each other.
In this poor, sad little area that the night that Duncan has found himself, we see very clearly all the other knights who have their tents set up, and that's where they all are staying. And he has no tent. He doesn't even think about a tent because he's used to not having one. Mm-hmm. So, and we also see in this the craftiness of the young boy, because he was able to, one, get himself into town, which was a day's ride from where we last saw him. So he went a pretty decent way for a young boy. He is able to locate where Dunk went off to and set up his area and finds the setup. But the only thing that was missing was a tent that he would expect. And Dunk says, I don't need one. And I sleep under the stars. And I think there's another part about hedge knights when the two ladies are talking about it, where he references that his knight, the knight he squired for, Sir Arlen, he said the hedge knights are the truest knights, because they are the common people. They are of the people. They are not above the people. They don't look down on anyone.
He does look at the boy and he decides, he will take him on. And he says to the young boy, and he promises him that he will take him into his service and that he will always provide him with clothing and food, and he will never beat him. And at that point, I was like, what? His name is Egg?
And not just because it's a funny name, and not just because he has an egg-shaped head.
Yes. Which is not nice to say, but
well, it's as smooth as an egg.
Like yours. The reason why is because I know this show is taking place about 100 years earlier than the Game of Thrones. And there's a character there named Aemon Targaryen that's a member of the Night's Watch. And when he is in the Night's Watch and he is on his deathbed and he is having hallucinations, he imagines that he is talking to his brother, and he has a nickname for his brother, which is Egg. And his brother's name is Aegon Targaryen, and his nickname was Egg.
The name's Egg. There's two things, because when he introduces himself as Egg, it tells us, those people who know or paid attention to the small things that she mentioned, that he is in fact a Targaryen. And it also brings, and then in response, Duncan says, well, I am Duncan. And he starts to say something, but then he corrects himself and says, or he's going to say Sir Duncan. And then he's like, no, I am Sir Duncan the Tall.
Because I was saying, what luck would have it that he happened to take on a squire, or that ran into this young boy and took him on as a squire, and that this squire, unbeknownst to him, was a lord. Be sure Dondarrion is not going to vouch for him to be in the tournament. So at this moment, I don't know who is going to sign for him and vouch for him to be in the tournament. Perhaps it will be Baratheon, because it seems like he has befriended Baratheon. Duncan still doesn't know that he has a little lordling as a squire. Egg says something along the lines of, all the other knights are in their fancy tents right now of silk, sleeping by now, but we're out here observing this lovely fallen star, and it is said that those that observe falling stars receive good luck. And at first, Dunk is like, do you want a slap in the face for that? Because he's thinking at first that is some sort of insult, because they're out just sleeping in the field, that they can't afford a tent. But he quickly realizes and turns to Egg and says, well, it looks like the luck is ours alone. And it ends with Egg smiling.
We know from the end, the very brief moment of the blonde person at the end who's drunk. He says, who tosses a dragon coin, who is obviously a Targaryen. We know he says, I dreamt of you. And this goes to the concept that this is not luck, and that there are some things in this world that are not by chance. It is not by chance that Dunk happened to be there alone and happened to meet young Egg. So I believe going forward, this is setting up that there will be luck, that luck doesn't get involved. And again, the appearance. So the appearance is that he is a poor knight. He's so poor he has to sleep outside. But what is really revealed is that he is fortunate because he saw a shooting star and was likely granted luck, whereas other people were not. Other people who have the same goal to succeed in this tournament. And so the one person who probably needs luck more than anybody else was able to get that. So what is luck? What is fate? What is prophecy? And how does that play into this? That's where we are heading next.
I guess it depends on what religion you're following in the world of Song of Ice and Fire. So I hope you join us for episode 2.
We shall see you then. Click like and subscribe. And follow us to get the updates when we release our next video. Thank you for joining us. We are the Justified Ancients of Asshai.